Namaste, Salamat Pagi, a multicultural city that houses a great diversity of human groups of primarily Asian origins, all living together in an amicable assimilation, representing a model worthy of imitation. It is said of this city that it's a kind of Asia, but in miniature. From the spiritual angle, it is even more admirable. This human conglomerate respects and promotes religious understanding among the different groups. The plurality of faiths and confessions make of this city a peaceful place for the spiritual diversity and practice the religion of your preference. Another fascinating point to highlight is the respect for the different linguistic orientations that historically form the roots of this city. Due to the large Malay component of its population, the commonest spoken language is Bahasa Malaysia or Bahasa Melayu. However, its locals easily speak English, being the language of business and a compulsory language at the schools. In addition to this, the inhabitants of Chinese ancestors speak Mandarin, Cantonese, and Hakka, and those of Indian origins speak Tamil, Malayalam, and of course, Hindi. Furthermore, there is also a great influence of Arabic and more foreign languages. The foreigners in here represent roughly 10% of the population. It is adorned by architecture that incorporates Asian traditions influenced by Malay Islamic inspiration and colonial architecture with the strong postmodern touches. With a hot and humid climate all the year round, this city is influenced by monsoon winds during several months of the year when it rains heavily. Actually, many times I have felt in this city like being in my city, Bogota, Colombia, one of the cities where it rains the most in the world. Being a tropical country, full of water and fertile lands, they have so delicious and exotic fruits that trying is an entire fantasy. Recognized by UNESCO in the year 2020 as the World Book Capital, given the promotion of the culture of reading that is led in this city at all ages. In recent decades, it has had a spectacular growth, contributing to a figure close to 20% of a national production. Economic outputs include tourism, finance, electronics, manufacturing, and construction. This city has developed a strong technology infrastructure and a high human resource capacity. It is actually one of the top 10 most visited cities in the world. It is a captivating place, full of contrast and full of diversity, with a population of 1.8 million. As a result of its historical migrations and its fabulous geographical position in the Malay Peninsula, the Malaysian cuisine resulted in a symphony of flavors, making it highly complex and diverse, using striking condiments and aromatic herbs that will never go unnoticed. Colloquially known as Kale, this is the Garden City of Lights, the place where the renowned 88-story skyscraper, the Petronas Tower, is located. The capital of the Federation of Malaysia and the largest city of this country, seat of the government, and also home to the parliament, and the Istana Negara, the national palace of Malaysia. We are describing the extraordinary city of Kuala Lumpur, the city that we have chosen to propose a new story of mediation. I had the opportunity to coincide in Kuala Lumpur with someone with whom we share the same values, principles, and approach of mediation. He is a wonderful Australian, expert in the field of mediation with local agricultural communities in the Southeast Asian countries. He has facilitated the peaceful resolution of crucial disputes between smallholders, farmers, growers, producers, traders, and the big multinational companies. His name is Piers Gillespie, and I invited him to this space to share his ideas with us. Therefore, the mediation space of today will be dedicated to listening to the ideas of this expert in this specific field of mediation. Thank you very much indeed, Piers, for being part of Mauricio Mediate. Good morning. For me, it's an absolutely pleasure being here with Piers Gillespie in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, at one of the most important events in the palm oil sector. So thank you very much, Piers, for accepting this interview and for being with us, sharing your knowledge and your experiences with us.
No, not a problem, Mauricio. Very happy to do so.
Okay, thank you very much. Piers is a really experienced guy. He has been in the last 20 years working in the South Asian countries like Malaysia and Indonesia, and basically he works on sustainability and conflict dispute resolution in the palm oil sectors and agribusiness sectors. Piers, could you please share with us your experiences in these 20 years working around the Southeast Asian in the palm oil sector?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. The industry's had tremendous growth, in the last 20 years. And palm oil is a very land-intensive crop. Requires a lot of land. Okay. So as we know with any other crop, through history, wherever there's a big development of crop, there's always land conflict, land issues, land conflict always occurring, Okay. So I have worked a lot in sustainability and trying to bridge between large companies who have large mills, plantation mills, to prepare what is called palm oil, and working a lot with communities, what we call here in Indonesia, masyarakat, working with communities and farmers to try and improve the balance and improve the sustainability of performance for both the plantation company and smallholders.
Okay. And what have been the most difficult barrier that have you found during this work and performing this job?
Goodness, that's a really hard question, yeah?
I know.
I think it's very similar to countries everywhere, and this includes my country, Australia, where you have overlapping land regimes and overlapping understandings of what land is about, And I'm sure this is similar to experiences you've had.
Absolutely, in Colombia would be the same,
Yes, so where you have customary law or indigenous law and indigenous rights, and then of course you have state law, and you have the desire for states, whether it's in Colombia or Malaysia or Australia, you have the great desire of countries and governments to expand and produce and make economic gain, and they almost always conflict with indigenous land rights and indigenous beliefs.
Because on one side is the government trying to design the policies and boost the economy, and on the other side there are the indigenous people trying to protect their rights, right?
Yeah, that's right. And what's fascinating for people like you and me is how can we get the best possible outcome with those two competing interests.
Absolutely. Here's, what do you think are the key elements that play an important role in these mediation processes or processes of this nature?
I think the processes of mediation, the normal processes of mediation are really important. And those are skills like the listening, the ability to listen, Yeah,
Absolutely.
the ability to understand other people's points of view, right? To genuinely listen, and that's a very hard skill. It's taken me many years, many years to actually sit back and listen. It's very important to not provide solutions at the beginning, and really unpack the issue. Really unpack, try and understand, try and work out specifically what are the key issues that we're actually going to try and work on in this next process. There are a lot of problems with rural agriculture. There's many problems relating to livelihoods and poverty and infrastructure and many other things. So it's important to work out what are we going to try and achieve? What are we going to try and mediate and improve? So again, that gets back to the ability to listen very carefully, and then work with the parties to try and work out which are the 3 or 4 particular issues that we are going to work on in good faith together.
How about building trust?
Yes, it's a really good point. The trust is key. You're absolutely right. And that does relate to good faith, doesn't it? There is again no point, and I've noticed this in Australia and in Indonesia and in Papua New Guinea. There is no point coming to the table with a defined set of what your BATNA almost. That doesn't help if you've just come in and you've worked out this is what I want to get out of this. It's going to be a very long, difficult mediation, because you need to genuinely listen to the other party and try and seek opportunity from the situation that you're in now.
Piers, who are the main or the principal stakeholders in this kind of conflicts, and what are their role?
Sure. Certainly the key stakeholders are the large palm oil plantations or the plantations who own the mills. The mills are really key because they provide a place where the farmers can sell their what is called fresh fruit bunches, so their product, their agricultural product. The farmers themselves are clearly a key part of this. The community is always a key player because land affects all of the community, not just you or me or individual people, right? Sometimes I may say that I own a particular piece of land. The plantation may say they own it according to law, and your family may say that you own it. So you have these overlapping land rights. So
because it could be 3rd or 4th generation that you got the land.
Yes.
For your ancestors.
Correct. And you also may have transmigrants. So you have people who've come into situations, right, or come into communities. So they're the ones locally. Certainly the local government plays a role because the local government is key in terms of the policing and the legalization. And the land use planning and things like that. So they have to be involved and aware of what's going on. There is no point trying to reach agreements with farmers and plantation companies if the government is not going to be supportive of the agreement as well, right?
Absolutely.
So they don't need a seat at the table with the mediation, but they certainly need to be kept updated and respected and again listened to, because their point of view is often very important in all this as well. The other group that's quite important, and I noticed because we're here at a very large international conference on palm oil, is the buyers. So the international buyers, they need to provide pressure down to, and that's pressure in terms of their purchasing, but also in terms of their support to try and reduce conflict, right? So they need to sort of roll up their sleeves and get involved in terms of what role can they play as buyers of the palm oil product, to try and increase sustainability, reduce conflict, protect biodiversity, increase livelihoods. It's no longer appropriate or fair. It's no longer appropriate that they simply buy 1 ton of crude palm oil and not really worry about where it came from. They need to have responsibility for their supply chain.
Otherwise it's going to be a mess because the buyer they need the raw material forever and ever and ever. It's not only once.
Yes, exactly. And we've seen that, right? We see that in all sorts of other commodities. We see that in coffee and pulp and mining, right? And we're certainly going to see it in energy as we transition away. All those things, they all need to be aware in terms of the supply chain.
Here's to your point of view, what are the opportunities that you can see in the international regulations to get better outcomes in this kind of conflicts?
There's a piece of work was done. It's an international instrument called the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It's called UNDRIP, Now, UNDRIP is a piece of work that's been designed by indigenous people. It was finalised in 2007. It's a fantastic global instrument which sets up a series of very, very well-written, simple articles about how to improve the way companies and governments, when they move into indigenous people's land or rural communities, how they can behave better, how they can do things better. So the UNDRIP is a very important piece of work. One of the most important things that comes from UNDRIP is this notion called free prior informed consent, or FPIC. Free prior informed consent is essentially a passport that a community gives you that says you can come into our land, but not without our free prior informed consent. So those four aspects need to be worked on by the company or by the government to ensure that communities feel like you are welcome to come onto my land. And when you work towards FPIC, you don't necessarily have to be perfect in everything you do, but the actual demonstration and the effort,
commitment.
Yes, that means that you are going to be received so much better in a community, because you will be seen as trying to do the right thing for the longer term in terms of sustainable development and benefits for community. And this is really important.
And can we apply in Latin America this kind of regulations?
Absolutely, yes. So it's I'm not sure if Colombia, for example, has ratified the UNDRIP. But there are some countries who have not only ratified it, but they're now making it part of their national law. That's great. That is fantastic. That means that, again, for companies and for businesses and for governments, there is automatically a far more equitable table in which to negotiate and work together as partners, as opposed to that sort of inequality that has existed for far too long.
Okay, sounds really interesting. And now, Piers, what piece of advice would you give to the mediators or to the negotiators that are involved in issues or controversies, or have to deal with controversies arising out of agricultural sector or similar stuff?
Yeah, I think in terms of learning experiences, I think it's very important to always try and put yourself in the other person's shoes. You know, and that's a fundamental, really, isn't it, of mediation and conflict resolution, right? I think that's a very important process. It takes time. And so I think the other thing we can learn is the amount of time it takes, is that you're not trying to create an agreement straight away. You're trying to develop a relationship that will then pave the way for some sort of an agreement, So it's putting yourself in the other person's shoes. It's moving slowly. You have to move as slow as the slowest person, not the fastest. You move as quick as the fastest.
Be patient.
Yeah, be patient, right? And then I guess the other point is, and this I learned from working in Indigenous Australia, is you're just trying to get to another meeting, If you can get to another meeting, you are developing the relationship. So as you said, be patient, right? Be patient, have another meeting in a month, have another meeting the month after, and you bring them together and you get a body of work.
And lastly, you are very welcome to Colombia. Where are you going to Colombia?
I would love to come to Colombia, Marcio, and work with you. It would be wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Again, and
thank you.
Hope to see you in Colombia.
Next year,
Absolutely, next year. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Piers. Okay. The finest sunlight or moonlight wherever you are in this lovely planet.